Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sarah Kinnison. I'm a program development consultant. There we go. With Achieving the Dream. I love working with Achieving the Dream, and we're working on many initiatives with a lot of focus on such important things to my heart and to all of us, like equity initiatives. And I am so honored today to have with us our wonderful speakers, Rhonda Bob and Casey Tart. And I'd like to introduce them today. And as I do so, please feel free to, feel free. Oh, great. Thank you, Onyx. They are going to help me with admitting people. I'd like to feel free to introduce yourselves. Tell us about where you're dialing in from and where your position, and also a little something about yourselves if you'd like. We're happy you're with us. So our wonderful panelists are Rhonda Bob and Casey Tart. Rhonda Bob was born and raised in Ontario, Canada. She is the middle child with one brother and one sister and a mother to a Generation Z son. Dr. Bob is an associate professor of English for academic purposes, EAP, at Broward College's South Campus, where she teaches grammar and composition, phonetics and communication, reading, and student life skills courses. With many years in ESOL teaching and training, she started her career as an interaction leader with the University of Florida's English Language Institute. Over 23 years of her career has been at Broward College, where she held positions in the Learning Resource Center as an English lab tutor and then a curriculum support specialist in the Reading Lab. Dr. Bob has a Bachelor of Arts in Linguistics with a minor in teaching English as a second or foreign language, a Master of Science in teaching English to speakers of other languages, TESOL, and recently completed her Doctor of Education in Higher Education Leadership. Her dissertation title was Culturally Diverse English Language Learners' Perceptions of Blended Learning at a Southeastern American College. Dr. Bob considers herself a foodie and loves reading and traveling. Casey Tart is a senior instructor in the Department of Modern Languages and Literatures, where she teaches Spanish and Latin American studies. She is co-faculty leader of the Journey Cuba Study Abroad program and faculty leader of Cuba, History, Culture, and Society during the summer. At UCF, she helped co-found and currently co-directs the UCF Hillcrest Foreign Language Club. She also works hand in hand with CDL to further distance learning initiatives within the Spanish lower division at the university, most recently exploring adaptive learning methods and technology within her discipline. So we welcome our two panelists for inclusive and culturally responsive teaching, the importance of knowing and teaching your students.
Yes. Well, welcome everyone. Hi, Casey, how are you?
Good, great. I'm so happy to be here and have the opportunity to collaborate with Dr. Bob, who is outside of my own university community.
Okay, so we're going to begin. I'm going to share our slide, and Casey and I will bounce back off of one another, talking about adapting adaptive learning within a classroom or within your online setting.
Yes.
So for my particular campus, we use MyLab Mastering. It's a pre-made supplement courseware for online homework, tutorials, and assessments with Pearson Publishing, because that's a lot of the textbooks that we use. So to get a package deal, we use the two together, the book that we'll use in the classroom, and then the adaptive learning outside of the classroom, or as I do, I embed it within the classroom. And it correlates with your syllabus or course schedule, in addition to the objectives for the course and what we're covering in the class at that time. it's already used or have been used at Broward for many years. And so now incorporating it in the classroom as part of the curriculum is something new that we did out, instead of having it outside of the class as supplement work for them to do at home. It can be integrated into Blackboard environments. However, we're using it in D2L and we're using My Lab Mastering.
And at UCF, I am using an adaptive learning platform called Realize It. We use Canvas at UCF, so we also have this integrated into our learning management system, and the students see each of the items that they would need to complete in the adaptive learning system within each one of their modules. And it creates an individualized path for each student. And so particularly in my discipline of Spanish, that's very helpful. We're an HSI, Hispanic Serving Institution at UCF. So almost 30% of our student body identifies as Hispanic. And so that has been really helpful because we have folks coming in at all levels into our Spanish classrooms.
Okay. Thank you, Casey.
Mm-hmm.
Every Learning Everywhere. So Every Learning Everywhere network brings together 12 partner organizations to help college and university navigate the rapidly evolving digital learning landscape. And with it, their mission was to help higher education institutions improve and ensure more equitable students' outcomes through advancements in digital learning, particularly for poverty, impact, racially marginalized, and first generation students.
Mm-hmm.
Every Learner partners are addressing high failure rates in fundamental courses through Courseware on their campuses and utilizing high quality support, seeking to implement these adaptive courseware.
Yeah.
Casey, adaptive courseware?
So, yeah. So just a quick definition, because I do find that, even though we've been working on it for several semesters now, still people are asking, well, what is adaptive learning? What is this methodology? So they're online educational systems that are going to modify the presentation of content in response to student performance. So I could just give a little example. When a student starts out with a particular concept or a course, of study within the course, they may be presented with some questions that are going to determine their knowledge about that topic. These systems are going to capture fine-grained data, and they use feedback loops to create these personalized learning pathways that are going to look different for each student. As I mentioned, students are going to answer some initial questions that are going to help them generate additional activities that are going to help them move on toward mastery. So if they're doing really well in one topic, they may not have to complete as much work to finish with that concept. Whereas if they're struggling with a certain concept, the system is going to adapt and deliver to them what they need in order to master that concept. They can track their own progress and use the learning dashboard to better inform themselves about their learning, which I find particularly valuable in the classroom.
Yes. Next slide, sorry. So as part of the ongoing efforts to help community colleges develop effective teaching and learning practices, Achieving the Dream is working with 7 community colleges in Florida, Ohio, and Texas on this initiative, providing coaching and direct support to the colleges, fostering collaboration within and among the participating institutions, and serving as a liaison to the Every Learner Network. So I see my institution there, Broward College. Casey, yours is there?
Yeah, and UCF, University of Central Florida.
Correct. Let's go on. So Casey, would you want to tell us a little bit about your preliminary findings? What have you found?
Yeah, so I'll just give you a little bit of background about the redesign process that we went through and the courses that we focused on just briefly. So we redesigned initially elementary 1 and 2. at UCF. And we opted to eliminate completely the traditional textbook and publisher courseware. And so we developed our courses using OER, which are open educational resources, and other self-authored materials that a colleague and I had worked on. And then we employed the adaptive learning model using Realize It that I mentioned before. And so all of this content through with the help of an instructional designer was taken or put into the system. That was in spring of 2019, and just a little preliminary data from the semester that we had previously taught those courses into that semester, we saw student success go up. So when I say student success, I mean grades of A, B, and C. We had more students finishing the course with a higher grade. We also saw that our drop, fail, withdrawal rates in those courses also went down, and that was just from one semester to the next, and that was in both courses. So we were really excited to see that, and we're still working on, gathering more data where that is concerned. And just another quick thing, we also in kind of surveying our students and asking what they wanted out of these first semester Spanish courses, a lot of them had complaints about the textbooks and how the Spanish seemed really canned, or it wasn't reflective of their backgrounds or their experience with the Hispanic community. And so another thing this has allowed us to do is sort of have some real world application and create content that really speaks to these students and what they're actually trying to learn and get out of the language.
Nice. Well, faculty at Broward College led efforts to more fully implement adaptive coursework in our introductory courses. And the institution developed structured support and integrated tutoring efforts to support both the faculty and the student. We found that faculty built on previous supplementals use of adaptive courseware to integrate the technology into the course design and with the activities. The adaptive initiatives were supported by existing institutional structures, including the Center of Teaching Excellence and Learning. So our CTEL department helped train some of our faculty that weren't familiar with adaptive courseware and how to use it in these introductory courses. Such as our remedial or our low-level courses. And so they had and provided ongoing training, and they still are, providing professional development and curriculum expertise, working with an instructional designer. And students were supported by tutors in our college's academic success centers, and those that were familiar with the adaptive courseware being faculty and those within the Academic Success Center. We partnered to help other instructors as well as teachers students that weren't as familiar in how to use it to work with the students. With our adaptive courseware, it's being also integrated on broader efforts to improve gateway instruction, including new types of introductory courses in math, as well as EAP, which is our English for Academic Purposes. So quite similar to you, initially they do their pre-assessment, and then we design, or it pretty much designs itself how the path of the student will go following the course of the class. We have seen an increase in grades, utilizing the technology, using the Academic Success Center for tutoring, as well as assistance to help use the adaptive courseware. So we've had good response to it initially. And like you said, we need some ongoing data. But with response to COVID-19, both students and faculty reported fewer transition issues with moving fully online when that occurred. Because we had this in place and we were implementing it already, it helped when the pandemic came around.
Yes, and just to add to that, because the courses in particular that we teach are fully online, really, yes, in our lifestyles, we felt a change with COVID-19, but as far as the way we were teaching and the way we were delivering the courses, nothing changed. So that was a kind of serendipitous that we started in spring 19, and then when spring 20 rolled around, you know, myself and the colleagues that were teaching using adaptive learning, we really didn't feel much of a shift, and our students, it didn't affect our students either.
Agreed. Yes.
Mhm.
So adaptive courseware, some of the advantages that I wrote, and so I'll discuss that as Casey goes into the uses of the
Yeah.
course adapter. I found with the advantages of it, it focused on what students need to know, understand, and do, because you're able to, at least with My Lab Mastering, is tailor it to the course. So it goes along with what we're covering that week or within that particular unit. And students were able to know what they need to do, understand it, and then follow up and do it. It reinforces what we were teaching in the classroom. We were able, again, to design and align the learning activities with learning outcomes. And it provided comprehensive content to better prepare students when they came into class time, because I would assign it prior to class. We would highlight and discuss the content in class, and then I gave them an opportunity to utilize the software again within class with me assisting them. And again, when we went on fully online during the pandemic, it helped because they were able to still do that with their computer in front of them, and we were able to go into it. And it provide learning analytics to inform my teaching of where there was areas of discrepancies or issues or concerns where students weren't really grasping the knowledge. I was able to instantly see it and then adjust my teaching accordingly.
Yeah, and so just to kind of hit those bullet points quickly with my own experience, you know, what we used previously, students, if there were 50 questions about a certain topic, the students had to answer all 50 questions. And so there was some fatigue associated with the courseware. And what we were finding, and what we are finding now, is that if students have background knowledge about this, be it from high school or, you know, growing up in the community and hearing Spanish or being taught Spanish or spoken Spanish in the home, they were able to move on past things a little more quickly and not have that frustration associated with, well, I have to finish this in order to get X grade. They were able to show mastery earlier. Same with us as far as being able to design and align our learning activities just exactly the way we wanted them. And while we don't have class time for students, what we were seeing is once they had completed the adaptive learning assignment or module, that then when they went on to complete more high stakes kind of writing assignments or taking any sort of more high stakes assessment, they were better prepared. And I know we'll talk a little bit about analytics later, but the analytics with these programs, it is so exciting to be able to see in real time kind of how your students are doing and be able to address that in real time as well. So here you see, as far as uses, you can create a prerequisite learning experience. For example, our students, before they move on, they have to answer at least 20 questions on a topic to prove that they have mastered that topic. And some students will be delivered up to 100 or more questions, depending. But having a prerequisite is a really good idea. And that helps you see too, the class as a whole, kind of how much time they spent on a topic or how much more time they might need or how to supplement. Introducing content, reinforcing content, assessing their learning, and providing feedback. It is so much easier, I find, to do this using an adaptive tool. When I sign into my particular platform, I have a little section that says need to know that may list students who need intervention, be it students who need extra help or students who might need a little extra because they're doing really well. And I may want to give them something to challenge them a little more. And so again, you have here as pre-work before class or reinforcing after class. With me teaching fully online, you know, there are things that I can give to them prior to kind of prep them, or things after. But if you are in the classroom environment or teaching even in a hybrid classroom, this is such a valuable tool because it can tell you maybe what you need to address during that really precious class time with your students, because there's nothing that they like less than being in a classroom and having you talk to them about something that they already understand or know how to do. And acting as a review tool, I personally leave my adaptive learning modules open the entire semester, and my students go back, and by the end of the semester, I mean, I could go in there now and they could be back working in the first module, preparing themselves for the final exam, preparing themselves for the final project, you know. And I always tell my colleagues, say, well, you don't put a due date on that. And I thought, no, do you put a limit on, you know, how much Spanish your students speak? That's kind of the way I think about it. You know, it's like, well, you finished that one part, so you're not going to speak Spanish about that anymore. You got to keep going. No, that doesn't make sense. It's amazing to have them be able to go back and continue to review, continue to practice, and see new questions and new material.
Right. Now, Casey, a question came up, and both you and I can try to grasp it. It says, how were you able to gather student feedback on how they were experiencing adaptive courseware?
So we did some sort of informal surveying. We did some more formal surveying through our Center for Distributed Learning at UCF. There are folks who kind of dedicate themselves to that sort of thing and collecting that type of information. Sometimes I will just send an email to my students and just ask them what they thought, or I'll put it in an announcement and say, what did you guys think about this? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did it work? Did it not work? You know, so some of it is just anecdotal, and you know, maybe just 2 or 3 students say, I thought it was great, or I didn't, you know. So we've kind of at all levels for me. What about you, Rhonda?
Well, of course, you did have a case study, so I'm sharing that within the chat room too.
Oh, yeah.
So there is a case study that both institutions did. I put in
Yes.
Casey's, and I'm going to add mine again, Broward Colleges. And you can also find our case studies as well as other institutions that have used adaptive courseware and other types of courseware in the research section of this conference. So our case study helped us to dive into not only assessing the students, but also the faculty to get a sense of how they felt about using adaptive courseware. Again, this is something that we've always had, but we kind of highlighted it and made it an integral part of our curriculum. So now students are realizing, oh, in previous courses, it was an afterthought or homework or busy work, but now there's a new push to use it as part of the curriculum. And a lot of them actually gave great responses. Again, please review our case studies. We put it in the room. I'm going to put mine in also. Great information, chock full of how to implement it, some of the success and challenges, which we'll discuss later, and even how to onboard.
And so just one more thing to add that I thought of as I was listening to Rhonda. In my particular situation, and with the platform I use, one of the tools that is presented to the students and also to us are emojis. And I will be honest with all of you and out myself right now. When I saw those emojis, I rolled my eyes a little bit because I thought, why? I find that is one of the main tools that I use now. Yes. My students click on those emojis to show me how they're feeling, and I'm able to immediately reach out and say, you know, why are you feeling frustrated, or why are you feeling sad? You know, I like it when I see them happy, but the ones that I kind of reach out and say, like, what's going on, or how are you feeling? And in my first semester using this technology, I was able to kind of find one group within these courses. They were heritage learners and speakers of Spanish. So they were getting questions wrong because they were spelling things wrong, but they were saying, but I know what I'm saying and I know how to speak Spanish. And so I was able to kind of help them and dial into that one little group, kind of dig down with them and figure out ways to help them. So those emojis are a lifesaver for me. And some of them have written back and said, you can see that? And I said, well, of course I can see it. Why do you think it's there? You know, just so you can kind of reflect on yourself. Yes, that's part of it. But also, you know, I've been able to to really help students and create, more of a relationship with them just based on those emojis. So I kind of, my initial reaction was like, oh, what are we going to do with these? And then now I'm like, I can't live without the emojis. I need them. That's like my connecting tool.
I agree. Absolutely agree with that. So let's talk about the backward design process. And this is with regards to onboarding and the initial start of getting adaptive courseware in your life or in your course. And so these are 3 areas. The first one is first identify your desired results. And I'm going to go more into it in case it's going to piggyback based on how her institution implements it. And then we'll discuss determine acceptable evidence and design learning experiences. Okay, you ready for this ride? Let's go. So the backward design process. With identifying desired results, you want to ask yourself, what is your course's goals? So looking at the outcome of your course, what exactly do you want to consider? So in the first stage, educators must consider the learning goals of the lesson, unit, or the course, right? And there's a useful process for establishing these curriculum priorities. There's a suggestion that the instructor asks himself the following guiding questions as they progressively focus on the most valuable content. What should learners hear, read, view, explore, or otherwise encounter? So that's what I use. So looking at what is our outcome, what is our end goal, we were able to establish that as our springboard of how we're going to go about to get that and collect that. Casey, how did you use it at your institution?
So I would say probably what we were looking for at UCF was something that was a bit more student centered. And so with that, taking the route of eliminating the textbook, we were able to have more freedom and creativity with what we were presenting to our students. And so then that was allowing for more freedom and creativity with them, what they were producing and giving back to us. And also a lot of it had to do with student preference and demand. And this is kind of going off topic a little bit, and we may come back around to it, but affordability was a huge issue at UCF for us. And so I didn't mention that before, I could have, but affordability was something else that we were really focused on. So we can talk about desired results like with content and content, of course, but another kind of desired result of using adaptive learning. And a course goal of ours was just having students be able to start the course when the course opened and not have to wait for financial aid to release or something like that. So, and as far as, how we set up our course, again, with it being fully online, each module looks exactly the same. The students start out with the content in the adaptive program right off, and then they build over a 3-week period, kind of completing all of their different assignments. So we kind of give them everything all at once that first week. And then from there, they know, they kind of have the knowledge, they've reached their level of mastery. And then if they see that they are not performing well on the more high stakes things, again, they're able to go back.
Yes, it's great that you did mention cost, because we found that the coursework built upon existing efforts to reduce those financial issues for students, with some products meeting Broward's goal of keeping textbook and material costs below $40 per semester. So that really was key, with the integration between the adaptive courseware products and Broward's learning management system. It ensured that students could have access to this adaptive assignment without having to click around all over for it. So that is a key thing to consider, in addition to what is it that you want to achieve and what skills do you want to build upon. For step 2, well, other questions that came up with regards to identifying desired results. What should learner hear, read, view, explore, otherwise encounter? Also, what skills will the learners master? We talked about that. And what are big ideals and important understanding learners should retain? So the end game is what we were looking for, but you start that first before you try to go and achieve it.
And I find that using adaptive learning, you're able to communicate and get this across to the students better. And so then their kind of ownership over the material or the class or what they're learning, they're so much more invested and engaged with this type of system and with this, type of methodology, in my experience.
Yes, I agree. The same with me. With part 2 or step 2, you want to determine acceptable evidence. You want to consider what assessment or performance tasks are needed to provide evidence that students understand the material. Again, utilizing some guiding questions like, how will I know if students have achieved the desired results for the entire lesson or the course? How will I know if students have achieved the desired result within the adaptive courseware? And how will I accept as evidence of understanding and proficiency in the adaptive experience? For us, again, it was their grade. And if they were progressing, doing better or worse, that was our measurement. Casey, did you?
Yeah, same with us, just being able to watch their grades and being able to monitor that so much more closely and reach out to students that we saw were struggling with a certain topic, whereas before it may have maybe a few weeks would have passed before we really saw that a student was struggling with something. But with the analytics that were given, they are so detailed. I mean, I don't even know how I would use them all. I'm still finding new things. But with those analytics, we are really able to reach out to a student immediately and say, I see that you're having trouble with this. What can we do? Do you want to come to my office hours? Can I give you this? Let me just type an explanation via email. Sometimes it's that simple. Like I'll reach out to a student. I'll say, what exactly is going on here? I'll give an example just via email and write. And I see immediately, that they are like, oh, okay, that it comes to them. So being able to communicate with them faster, if you will, has been a huge help, especially in the online environment, where sometimes, I don't know how many of you teach online, but years ago, it was kind of like this person's here and then suddenly they're gone. Where did they go? And you may email them, but then they don't answer. But with this type of system, a lot of times communicating with them is a lot easier, more efficient.
And immediate, I found with them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Faculty said that the courseware helped them identify students who are struggling and let students track their own progress.
Mm-hmm.
So that was key. Students were not always aware that the progress in the courseware was being monitored, but recognized the importance of when we were doing so to keep them on track. And it helped me to identify if I had to get a group of students that were behind, I can have them meet with me in my office hour as opposed to taking up classroom time to go over those skills if need be.
Yeah. And I find that our students like that leveling up, and probably a lot of us as well. And so I find my students, they work toward that little green circle of mastery with the star in it. They want the star, and it might take them another 2 hours, but they will not quit until they get it,
Yeah. So I was following some of the previous workshops today, and they talked about badges. So that mastery star is like their badge, and they are again achieving to do that. And then when you, I guess, have a stake within the course, the adaptive courseware, then students see the significance of it and they buy in on it, and then they want to achieve that mastery versus the professor's not looking at it, the professor's not keeping track of, why should I care? They're not using it as evidence. Why should I even want to do it? But when they know that we are looking and we are monitoring and we are using their badge, their little star of honor. And I also mention it. I come back into class and say, wow, you guys are really mastering it. I've seen so many stars. They're like, oh, I didn't get a star, or how did you get a star? And so they are driven to do so. It's a great tool for them to have and a great way for us to assess them.
Yes. Well, and autonomy and customization too, because, I encourage my students when they are working through it, if they have a question that they need to query because they didn't understand the answer, if there's something in the content, we've been able to add multiple, of course, there are different dialects of Spanish, different countries use different words for different things. We've been able to add so many answers into our, like the answer key when they're answering questions, or we've had students email and say, this is not representative. I don't feel that this is representative of my community or of my, group. And so then we can say, okay, well, what's a better way we can say this? And that's immediate. We can go directly into the system, edit the question, edit the answers, and that I think is really amazing as well, rather than having to try to contact a publisher and say, can you please change this question? Because,
Correct.
so.
Yeah. Sarah mentioned in the comments, she said, when kids are little, they love shiny stars. Yes, our stars. Now the badges are bringing that back, but in a developmentally important way for adults. And I agree with that. Yes. So let's talk about step 3, design learning experiences. You want to plan the learning experiences and decide on the learning strategies. So what is the procedure, as well as what activities will provide knowledge and skills, what knowledge concepts and skills do students need? Those are the strategies. And so with the adaptive courseware, they have that embedded in it. It's all already an intricate part of within its software, within its courseware. It has an overview. It has a review part, a pre and post test, some practices. So it already has that within it, design learning experiences.
Yes. And I find too that having the learning experience designed this way leaves more time for teaching and learning.
Yes.
I am no longer having to be tech support. A lot of times with other platforms we were using, or specific publisher platforms, all of the questions that I was answering had to do with the technology. They were not questions about my area of expertise, which is Spanish. And so that has been, for me, huge to know that my students are going to be able to go into the system. They're going to be able to work through these chunks of information. They're going to be able to answer these questions. If they don't understand them, it's going to, without me doing a thing, tailor itself to this student's knowledge in order to let them be successful. And in the end, even if it's a required course, our students want to do a good job. They want to be successful. And so removing some of the obstacles from their path, it's amazing. And it has allowed me in the last several years to feel like I'm a teacher again.
I agree. And it's not about focusing on what they don't know, but seeing that, oh, you don't know, but here's an opportunity to know it in and outside of the classroom. So they don't feel like we're hovering over them and critiquing every little move, right or wrong. It's a great way for them to get their feet wet and their bearings right. And again, follow up through class with teaching the content some more versus, feel like we're struggling to do the two. Like,
and to feel comfortable saying what they are not understanding, rather than, you ask the student, well, what is it you're having trouble with? And they say everything, all of it. Now they can say, I'm specifically having a problem with this node entitled X. And then you can go from there.
Great point. Yes. So also you want to consider what activities will be done before, during class, and after class time. As we mentioned, they are able to tap into some of the skills before class, which narrows into what they do or don't know, versus that whole everything is confusing me, right? During class, we can address it, and then they can follow it up again after class. So it's a great pairing of before, during, and after.
Yes. And if you're in the fully online environment, it's very simple to adapt this same type of thing to the online environment and to deliver things in such a way that it's going to make sense for them and not overwhelm them.
I agree. And you might design the relationship of the course activities with the adaptive experience. So see examples of the course structure and then utilize it within the adaptive courseware.
Yes.
Very good. Yes. So here are some examples of course structures with adaptive courseware. Now, Casey, yours may be different versus my English language learners. So let's talk about that. So pre-assessment, and we can go through all of the different key points: pre, before, during, after, options, and additional questions to consider. So working with pre-assessment, For us, we create a prerequisite learning experience as a diagnostic for their placement, create a baseline for the students and their knowledge, and then consider that the adaptive experience can be used as a placement exam or a means of a start of where they are, and I can see where they're going.
Yes, and so as I mentioned before, we have questions at the beginning of each content node of a module within or a lesson within, and students have to complete a minimum of 20 questions in order to show mastery. The default for the system was 3. We found with Spanish that that was not enough, that students might just guess the correct answer and it was moving them on and they were not prepared. And so we definitely, after the first semester, reassessed that, and students must answer 20 questions before they're allowed to move on.
Nice.
On a
I
certain
think it gives a true assessment of where they're at. Yes.
Mhm.
Now, before class, you can create pre-work or class prep activities. The faculty within our department, we have already designed how we want the coursework to go, and it's aligned, or the adaptive courseware, and it's aligned with what we're doing in class for that week or in that chapter or that particular unit, right? And it goes with the required readings. You can use it as a study or a review tool. I like to have my students be exposed to the material prior to class, so I would assign it in before class, and then we follow up during class, and then they can do it after. Before class,
Yes.
do you use adaptive courseware?
So because it's a fully online class and it's 3 weeks per kind of unit, if you will, or module. In that first week, the student would be expected by Friday to work completely through all of the adaptive content. So for lack of a better word, it's their homework or their reading. So just like you, there would be required readings within that. We do have videos. I use, if you're familiar with the technology Lightboard,
Yes.
so we use a lot of Lightboard videos. They're in the process of creating even more of those because the student response has been overwhelming. They love the videos and they ask for more and more and more videos to watch, since we are in the fully online environment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how that would be our before class, if you will, that kind of that first week to kind of preload them with all of the information, all of the concepts that they're going to work on for those 3 weeks. And then during the second week, we move on to kind of some higher stakes assignments. And then by the third week, they're ready to write
Nice.
or have a conversation or post to a discussion board and have a discussion with their classmates, work on a culture activity. So within that first week, they do all of that. And then we have a little assignment that's a sort of like a check-in with some of the more difficult concepts. So it doesn't take them too long to complete, but they complete that. And then our grading turnaround, we're very mindful of turning that assignment around really fast. So if we are seeing that they're not understanding something, we can give them that feedback. And again, we give them another chance. Right. We say, okay, these are the ones you need to focus on. Let's do this assignment again.
Correct.
Before they move into week 2 and 3. So that's sort of our, if you will, our before class.
Okay. And during class, I like to start with a 10-minute talk to review or present key definitions that the students have worked on prior, right? Through either the before class lecture, discussion post, or assignment, as you mentioned. I create an environment for a portion of the class where the students are able to then also go back into the computer. We have laptops and we do have some computers within our classrooms, primarily the ones that I utilize, the adaptive courseware. So it's an opportunity for them to pull it up if they didn't grasp it and get it. And then we start class with a practice comprehensive exam question, building on what they did with their before class assessment or activity.
Yeah, and so kind of after what would be my before class, I do announcements. And so I give a lot of global feedback. I give very individualized feedback, but then I always go back after an assignment and I would do what I call my top 5. And I tell my students, these are my top 5. These are what you guys are doing wrong, if you will, the most, or this is where I'm seeing the most errors. And so I kind of go back with some global feedback for them.
Very good. Yes. And then after class, I can assign it as homework or follow up to what we did. Yeah, so these are some examples that you may use. Of course, not all works or all of it does work. It depends on your audience. So these are just some that we're sharing. So analytics, leveraging the learning analytics to inform the teaching. Casey, if you could tap into this real quickly.
Yeah, and I'm seeing in the chat that
Yeah.
we're running out of time. So I'll go really fast because I would love, to have, even if it's just 5 minutes, if you all have questions for us, that would be amazing.
Yes.
So as far as these data points and analytics, we talked a lot about analytics already, but just topic completion and mastery, topics that students struggled with, you are able to go in and with immediacy know as a group who is struggling, as an individual who is struggling. I have rewritten entire sections and changed questions and changed directions or instructions for my students where I've seen that they're struggling, because it's not always them. Time on task, student confidence of answer, knowledge state. I love to look at time on task because I love it when students will email me and they're like, blah, blah, blah. And then I go in and it's like 2.1 minutes in the content. And I'm like, what's going on? You haven't even looked at it. So, and then just a few strategies. Look at class level. I just mentioned that on various topics. You can shift your emphasis. You can change things to make it easier for them. Time on task. Who are my individuals that are struggling? Who are my individuals that are excelling? And maybe they shouldn't be in this course. So I'm going to give them a little bit of extra or point them in another direction. And offer support by sending an email, inviting them to meet for office hours, to a Zoom if it's a fully online class, so those are all things that I have done, and I highly recommend that. So I know we don't have much more time. But.
Yes. And finishing off, we just want to talk about onboarding. What strategies would you use? And here are some ideas as we wrap up today. In case it has been a pleasure talking about how you utilize it on your campus and vice versa mine. I would like it to open the floor for any questions or concerns. Ask away. We have at least a couple of minutes left to answer any questions.
Okay, I think the closing plenary is at 4:40. Let me just double check that. 4:43. So let's see. Since I don't think people can unmute themselves, I'm going to ask one question or two questions from here. Okay. I'm trying to find them now.
That's okay.
People are talking about the emojis up here.
Yes, they are successful.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time finding any of those questions now on the spot. This is a comment. Casey, I think it's really awesome that you keep assignments open. It really does prioritize student learning and is a much more empathic and caring approach to teaching. And then maybe just as a closer, this is a pretty big one, but maybe a quick response to, what do you think is the strongest way that you use to get to know your students?
Wow.
You've shared a lot. I want to let you know that this has been really interesting and inspiring. And I feel like you've really addressed the importance of knowing and teaching to your students in so many ways. And I know people would love to have, speak with you for another couple hours.
We can go on. I can go on forever about it. Yes.
Same here. I'll just say, as far as connecting with my students, I always have them do a presentation video in my online class, and I do guide them a bit, not just introduce yourself, say an interesting thing. Something I've started to say is like, talk about a place in, Latin America or in Spain or the Hispanic speaking world that you would like to visit. And I want to know why. And I thought it would be like, I want to go to the Dominican Republic because the beach is so beautiful, but their answers are so thoughtful. And I'm able to think back through that throughout the semester. And I always kind of keep a piece of paper with my student's name and some facts about them. This one likes to play video games. This one has a son. This one has and throughout the semester, I will ask, like, how is your son? How is your daughter? How is this going? And sometimes students come to you and tell you things that maybe you're like, why are you telling me this? Because I don't know you that well, but they need that support. And so I find too that I will reach back out and I'll say, how are you doing? How's it going now? Just a quick example, I had a student who both of her parents became very ill with COVID, and her father passed away this semester. And I was able to speak with her, talk with her, able to keep her on track, because she was so open with me, and knowing that she was now a caregiver for her mother as well, who was also very ill. We were able to kind of, not with the adaptive learning, it was tailoring to her, but also kind of tailor the course just in general to her. So knowing these simple things about your students and just reaching out and asking, I find that they're very responsive. Rhonda, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do all of that. Video orientation also work. And so where they get to introduce themselves and where you get to see them. So yes, there's multiple ways that you can.
You guys, I know you have so much more to say. You're the best. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you at the closing plenary. And thanks for filling out the evaluations and mirror boards. You're the best. Thanks. Bye.
Bye, guys.